the questions, and we will take those questions one by one. We are recording this session, so this will be available to you on the chapter YouTube channel that you can refer to. What is BABOK? For those of you who have not heard about this term or who are new to BABOK, it is a reference guide that defines the knowledge areas, tasks, underlying competencies, techniques, and something that has come up new in BABOK 3 called perspectives for the business analysis profession. It's a it's a reference guide. We call it reference guide because it doesn't mandate that you have to follow every step the way it is documented. It tells you certain level of knowledge, tasks, underlying competencies, techniques that you can leverage while performing those knowledge areas in your project. Um, version 2 took almost 5 years. When we did version 2, it was a very long journey. Nothing existed prior to BABOK that could really define the role of business analyst very clearly. So it took a lot of effort for us to get to version 2. But version 3 is a brand new version that got released on April 15th. It's a very significant enhancement or advancement in the space of business analysis profession, and it's kind of an essential standard to help practitioners and their stakeholders deliver business value and create better business outcomes. So if you look at version 3, again, it took a lot of learnings from version 2, and then it has improved. It has become extremely flexible, and we'll go through some of that in our today's webinar. But the first question, why version 3? Why did we get to version 3 at all? Why not? Was version 2 not enough? There are very specific reasons. We wanted to keep the BABOK guide current. There are a lot of engagements that we all participate in, and all those situations are different. We just wanted to make sure that BABOK caters to all those different scenarios, and at the same time is flexible enough from an application point of view when it comes to applying it in any of the disruptive technologies, for that matter, that are emerging, or any new area that's emerging. So we wanted to keep it current. We also wanted to incorporate the learnings that we came up during V2. I mean, of course, a lot of people talk about version 2, BABOK version 2 be specific to IT space, and we wanted to look at that and take that feedback into account and make sure that we incorporate some of the learnings like that we went through in version 2 and incorporate that in version 3. Make it more applicable in more situations. Every project has a different scenario. We do projects sometime in agile. We are managing business processes, and so on and so forth. Digital. So there are a number of situations, and each project has its own traits. We wanted to make sure that BABOK is we are able to apply BABOK in all those scenarios as much as possible. Improve the theoretical underpinning and models. Of course, when we did BABOK 1 and BABOK 2, there were a lot of experiences, collective learning from various volunteers across the globe that were put together. We just wanted to make sure that we improve our theoretical framework and make it more practice-oriented, make it more applicable in different scenarios. Improve our understanding, make sure that we understand business analysis space better than what we used to a few years back. So make sure that we cover the latest possible knowledge for the practitioners. And last but not the least, help the BAs do their job on a day-to-day basis. So these are some of the underlying principles that were followed in coming up with version 3. Overall, in the development process, there were a core team of 11 authors who worked consistently to develop the version 3 for 4 years. they kept certain rules in mind. Some of the rules that were kept in mind was to make sure that we consider the future of business analysis. So while doing version 3, because we didn't want version 3 to be a one-time effort. We want it to be a live document and cater to all the future business analysis needs. And you'll see that as we speak in this webinar. Keep the practitioners in mind. So it needs to be relevant to practitioners on a day-to-day basis. Establish a foundation, make it a underlying framework that can be leveraged by the practitioners. Don't break it. Make sure that we keep everything that we learned in BABOK version 2 plus all our experiences going forward. We wanted to make it intact, and and last, we are not done yet. We will this document will keep evolving as we speak, and so we wanted to keep these 5 principles in mind. uh, I'm lucky to have one of the core author as a part of my practice. So I'm pretty close to how these authors operated and what all we did. It was supported by almost 150 volunteers across the globe. And when we launched this product for a public review, we had close to 6,000 people who read the draft version and submitted close to 4,500 comments. And during this whole journey, the core team went through 2 weddings and 3 babies. And so you can imagine the amount of effort it took for us to produce the body of knowledge. Um, some of the key themes, that are the underlying themes for version 3, and I'm sure you're going to experience that in today's webinar. The most important was core concept model, a unified way of thinking around business analysis. You'll discover a business analysis core concept model that became the foundation for version 3. Um, Second point, getting beyond projects and software requirements. We had a lot of feedback during BABOK version 2 that it is very specific to IT space and it's not applicable in many of the other scenarios. We wanted to keep in mind that not all the projects are software projects, and BABOK should be applicable to as many scenarios as possible. The other thing was making sure that BABOK is easy to use. It's out of the theory, and one can apply it on a day-to-day basis. And I think, believe me, when I read BABOK 3, um, I think the team has really lived up to that expectation. It's so easy to refer to. There are further improvements that have been done when it comes to referring or relating, for example, technique to task and so on and so forth. There's a lot of improvements that have been done, which makes a practitioner's life much more easier. Accommodate different types of business analysts. So not all business analysts are IT business analysts. Some of them are pure on the business side. Some of them take care of the process areas and things like that. So we just want to make sure that BABOK addresses all those different type of BAs, even the product owners for that matter in the product space, and make it make BABOK content relevant to the wider audience. And last, design. It's a brand new term that got introduced. This is not a design like number of ITBAs refer to the technical design of a software. This is more about solution design, and we'll talk about that as well in our webinar. So some of the key themes that were kept in mind while developing BABOK 3. So for those of you who are familiar with BABOK 2, what you see on the screen is a diagram that depicted all the 6 key knowledge areas of BABOK version 2 and the underlying competency. So if you look at all the 6 knowledge areas and their relationship to each other and the underlying competencies, that's how it was reflected in BABOK 2. And believe me, when we would ask people about drawing this on a piece of on a blackboard or whiteboard, there were a lot of difficulties because people couldn't remember these arrows and relationship between different knowledge areas so effectively. So first task was to really simplify that in version 3, make it easy to connect, make it more relevant, and the interactions are much more cleaner among various knowledge areas, and this became another key simplification that BABOK version 3 has gone through, the knowledge areas have gone through. The other some of the changes, that the key changes that have happened is the chapters. The way they got redefined. So the number of knowledge areas still remains 6, but some of the knowledge areas have gone through some of the changes. For example, business analysis, planning, and monitoring still remains the same, but elicitation is extended to also include collaboration. Why? Because when we elicit requirements, it's not about just us, eliciting those requirements and keeping it to ourselves. It is very important that we collaborate with all our stakeholders and communicate the requirements. Make sure everybody is in sync with what is being elicited. So that collaboration became a key element, key discovery also during the BABOK 3 process that we needed to include. Similarly, requirement management and communication got a new name called requirements lifecycle management. Why? Because requirements management and communication is actually not a point in time activity. It's requirements have their own life cycle. They are elicited, they are managed, they are implemented, and once those requirements are no more relevant, they are sunset. So every requirement has its own life cycle, and hence the new avatar for requirement management and communication as a knowledge area. The next one is, and one of the very key difference, change that happened was enterprise analysis. This chapter caused some bit of confusion. Like in version 2, essentially enterprise analysis meant identifying the need and really coming up with a business case. But guess what? When it comes to a enterprise level assessment, it is much more than that. It's more about how that change has to be driven, what are the risks involved, and so on and so forth. So it was more about the whole strategy that needed to be taken care of, and hence the enterprise analysis chapter is gone, and there is a new knowledge area that has been introduced called strategy analysis. The next one was requirements analysis, a typical a BA's job to elicit the requirement and analyze them. But if we look back, we perform one more key element during analysis, and that is that we design and define the solution that we need to implement. And I'm not talking about, just to give you an analogy here, I'm not talking about the software design. I'm talking about a solution design that needed to be implemented. For example, business process needs to be defined, and that's a design element of a solution. For example, writing a standard operating procedure for executing a requirement, that's a design element of a solution. So a number of such non-technical and process-oriented design elements have been included, and hence you see that also getting covered in BABOK version 3. The last one, solution assessment and validation, got simplified in terms of its name called solution evaluation. So really, if you look at the literal term of assessment and validation, that actually means evaluation. So we just simplified the context here and also made sure that it is easy to interpret by everyone. So these are some of the changes that the knowledge areas went through. The other key difference, other key change that happened was the definition of business analysis itself. So in BABOK 2, the business analysis was defined as the set of tasks and techniques used in order to work as a liaison among stakeholders to understand the structure, policies, and operations of an organization, and to recommend solutions that enable organizations to achieve its goal. It was kind of ultra complex. And if you look at it now, this whole got a lot more simplified. So what is business analysis? It's a practice of enabling change in the context of organization by defining needs and recommending solutions that deliver value to stakeholders. So if you look at six terms that have been highlighted here, that is what encompasses business analysis. So it became extremely simple for us to remember in terms of what business analysis is all about. And if somebody asks us, we need to explain to our stakeholders we could do a better job of explaining what we are doing. The other one other aspect that we discovered in our day-to-day job of business analysis is that business analysis is not just about a project. It is much beyond the projects. There are a lot of activities that are done pre-project, and there are a lot of activities that are done after the project is implemented. So if you look at the box in the middle, that defines the project scope. But if you look at activities on the left and on the right of that box, a lot of these things take place beyond the project. So you build the pre-project business case and rationale behind why you are doing it. You do all the strategy analysis of the requirements, and once all of that is done and project is implemented, you do post-project assessment whether it has actually delivered the right benefits to the stakeholders, and you evaluate that solution. So there are a lot of activities that are beyond projects, and this is one another key key differentiator or key aspect that has been weaved into BABOK version 3. So let's talk about 6 key takeaways that you need to remember when you're looking at a version 3, right? Let's look at the first one. And I really like this one. That's why I have put this as the number 1 takeaway for me. We've added something called perspectives. So imagine a situation where you are applying business analysis or body of knowledge in different situations like business intelligence or agile or business architecture or business process management. It was in BABOK 2 days. It was hidden as if it was supposed to be understood by the BAs themselves. But guess what? It became confusing. It was difficult, and people said, "Oh, you know what? This is just around IT. We cannot apply BABOK so easily in other situations." So what we have done now is we've created something called perspectives. There are 5 perspectives in the first release of BABOK version 3 that has been included. That is agile, business intelligence, information technology, business architecture, and business process management. So they are used within business analysis work to provide a very focused direction in terms of how you can apply various tasks and techniques in that specific context of an initiative. Um, it's also very important because different VAs work in different ways, so it's very important for BABOK to provide some of that guidance. But guess what? This is not the complete list. We will keep adding various perspectives in our versions to come. So imagine this will become a live document, and as we speak, we are already started to think about a new perspective that can be added going forward. And there are a number of suggestions that have started coming up in terms of what we could add as perspective, and talk about how we can apply BABOK version 3 in all those different areas. Another key point is they're not mutually exclusive. So you can look at, it's not about applying BABOK in agile or business intelligence. You can read them. All of them cover the change scope. They cover how the business analysis, what is the business analysis scope in those specific areas, how you're going to apply methodologies, approaches, and various techniques, the underlying competencies that are required in each of these perspectives, the knowledge areas, the various impacts on various knowledge areas that you have to make sure that you observe. It has gone to that level, and that's why I think it provides great flexibility in adoption of BABOK version 3 across various situations. Um, and the most important aspect is that all of these perspectives are produced by experts in these areas. So I think it's a key aspect. This will give us much better flavor of BABOK application and help us in our day-to-day life. So number 1 takeaway, that there are perspectives that have been included, 5 of them as of now, more to come, and it tells you how to apply BABOK in all of those specific areas. So that's my first takeaway, one of my favorite ones. The other one is the definition of requirement, right? So if you look at BABOK version 2, and if you look at the definition of what a requirement is, we used to say that it is a condition or a capability needed by a stakeholder to solve a problem or achieve an objective. Or we used to say it's a condition or a capability that must be met or possessed by a solution or solution component to satisfy a contract, standard specification, or more formally imposed documents. Or third, a document representation of conditions which are stated above in above 2 points. Again, it is oof, it's so complex, right? And why complex? Because it's not about remembering these terms. It's about um, having an understanding, a clear understanding, so you are able to, when you're actually performing your BA role, you're able to relate to that. So it was very confusing, and that's what I think again got simplified a lot. So what is the requirement in version 3 now? It's a usable representation of a need. Very simple. What is a need? It could be a problem or an opportunity to be addressed, right? What would that need do? It will definitely create a value for its stakeholders. It is worth, it is important and useful to some of the stakeholders in a particular context. And if you look at stakeholders and context, that also got very clearly defined. Who are the stakeholders? A group of individuals, a group or an individual with a relationship to the change, the need, or the solution, and in a particular context or a particular environment in which the change has to take place. So the way the requirement definition got or requirement got defined, it is much clearer. We all understand the terms called need, value, stakeholder, context so very easily now, and so it became much more easy for all of us to really interpret what a requirement is. So this is another key takeaway I would urge you to remember. The third one is called business analysis core concept model. Again, a paradigm shift in my views on how the BABOK 3 came up with, and how different, how simplified it became by the use of 6 terms, and that is need, change, solutions, context, value, and stakeholders. So BABOK 3 is based on this core concept model. If you do more research on Google, or if you go to iiba.org and look for webinars, there are webinars that just explain how this core concept model works. But I'm sure all of us are smart enough to really understand these 6 terms fairly clearly. So this became a conceptual framework for business analysis and for BABOK version 3. It clearly describes the profession and domain of business analysis. So now if you step back and look for any real life scenario, whether it is your personal life for that matter, or any professional engagement, of any nature, irrespective of IT or non-IT for that matter, you can look at those engagements in the context of, or and look at those engagements with the lens of these 6 terms that are listed in BABOK 3. It becomes very simple to apply. It also helps us to get to why we are doing a particular engagement. It helps us to answer why very clearly. Why a change is taking place, why do we have a need, what kind of solution will take place, what is the context, what is the value, what is the, who are the stakeholders going to benefit out of it. So it helps us dig little deep into our business situation and understand all the aspects of business analysis on the project. So this is another key takeaway in my views, a key fundamental shift that has happened from BABOK 2 to BABOK 3, and the way we all perform business analysis in our day-to-day life. So this is takeaway number 3. From the core concepts, questions, we just discussed that. What kind of change are we initiating? What are the needs that we're trying to satisfy? Who the stakeholders are, what's the value to those stakeholders, what is the context in which this initiative is taking place, and so on and so forth. By answering these questions, now imagine, if you think about these 6 questions and apply them on your engagement today without even reading BABOK, I'm sure you're going to get much better clarity of the engagement that you're delivering. Uh, Takeaway number 4 is the strategy analysis. This is a huge shift from BABOK 2 to BABOK 3. I mean, for those of you who have read BABOK 2, you remember we had the chapter called Enterprise Analysis. The goal was to really, talk about the strategy and essentially come up with a business case. So it was about understanding the strategy, identifying the gaps, and really defining the need clearly and writing a business case. And that was what was covered. But guess what? If you look at the new avatar of that in the strategy analysis version 3, it is much more comprehensive. It talks about the current state, it talks about the future state, it talks about the risks that you need to take care, and also define the overall change strategy when you're moving from your current state to future state. So it went much beyond just the pure business case. And what it helps you is to understand the enterprise and its capabilities, identify the needs very clearly, go beyond just the project scope when you're defining the business case, and be very clear in terms of defining the goals, objectives, values, scope, and risk, etc. For the engagement. So to me, a huge value when it comes to starting an engagement, irrespective of whatever level you are at. If you look at your current engagement with the lens of strategy analysis and dig deeper, you're bound to get much better understanding of why a particular project is being taken into implementation. I think let's ask a question. How many of us, when we get onto a project, ask why our clients or stakeholders are executing or are interested in executing a particular project? More than likely, we say, oh yeah, this is the project, tell us, let's get into a discussion and let's understand the detailed requirements. We don't question why those requirements are needed. And I think strategy analysis is another key difference between BABOK 2 and BABOK 3 that will help us guide to perform our role a little better, dig a little deeper into our engagements that we are on, and get a much better clarity from the business point of view, and much better understanding of why our business need a particular outcome. The next is design. Again, I did refer to design as a term that got introduced. So I like this top statement. One person's design is another person's requirement. I think it's very, very clear. When we do our requirements, we knowingly or unknowingly incorporate a lot of the design elements into our requirements. We all know requirements is synonymous to what, and design is how. But then this is much in theory. When it comes to really the application, there is so much of overlap when it comes to the solution design. And I'm not, again, mind you, I'm not talking about the technical design here. I'm talking of a lot of the non-technical design elements that are needed for us to define the right solution. And one of the great examples that comes to mind is business process design, right? You have an existing business process, and for certain objectives that the client wants to achieve, you're going to revamp the process design. You're going to design a new process. You're going to design a new software architecture, for that matter. Or you're going to, for example, write a standard operating procedures. These are a lot of those non-technical design elements which we operate upon, and we need to make sure that we have defined them clearly for all our downstream stakeholders to imbibe it and then implement in the solution that we're talking. So again, a very key difference between BABOK 2 versus BABOK 3. Design elements, design options need to be considered. A very key point may not be, so when you say, for example, you're looking at the as-is business process and to-be business process, there are chances you have more than one version of a 2B business process, and you probably debate with the client what's the best form of executing a business process, and hence so on and so forth. So clearly, a lot of those design elements are essential when we, as BAs, define the right solution for our stakeholders, and hence, to me, this is another very key element that all of us need to remember. Let's look at the last one, and that is techniques. There were a number of techniques in version 2 that were very IT specific. What we have done now in version 3 is the techniques have got much more comprehensive coverage. There are most common widespread techniques that are used in the practice of business analysis by community globally. So we, initially when we started with including techniques in BABOK, we started with simple things like surveys. And then we surveyed what techniques are those that are being actually used by the BA, which are more prevalent. We removed and repurposed software-focused techniques in version 3. So there were a number of very software-centric techniques which really did not make sense to many of the other BAs, and hence we took them off. We moved some of the knowledge area specific techniques out of knowledge areas and make them generic, because we just wanted to make sure that it's a comprehensive representation of techniques. We added usage consideration. Now that's a very key aspect of technique. I think one of the confusion BABOK 2 had was, though it had a relationship with every task, the challenge was really to explain when and how to apply a particular technique, and that's what got included in version 3. So we've added the usage consideration for all the techniques. We have created a mapping between techniques and tasks. That's another key thing that happens. So if you're executing a particular task, it's so easy for you to just refer to the techniques that you actually can use while performing that task on a day-to-day basis. And this is more collaborative and business-focused techniques today that are included in version 3. So on your right of the screen, you see number of new techniques that got added. For example, backlog management. Typically, in the software space, people who are managing product backlogs, who are managing enhancement backlogs, and so on and so forth. How do you manage that? And so there is a technique that has been developed on that. Balance scorecard, business analysis, business capability analysis, a business model canvas. One of the very favorite ones that we use in our strategic consulting world, called business analysis, business model canvas, that got included, and so on and so forth. Mind mapping, process analysis, and things like that. So there are a number of new techniques that got added. In version 2, we had 34, but in version 3, we've got 50 techniques, and that's a very comprehensive list of techniques that are available at our disposal. Now imagine, I mean, I still remember, a world when I used to perform projects, and there was no BABOK. And believe me, the life was so difficult. If I look back, the way we executed projects, we used to conceptualize and come up with techniques on the fly at times, right? The life has become so simpler now and so more scientific, where there is a ready collateral available in terms of what kind of techniques you can apply in performing a particular task in a knowledge area. So it becomes so more simpler and applicable in our day-to-day world. One of the favorite ones that I want to talk about today is business model canvas. This is a beautiful technique that it's a great framework that helps us build a very clear understanding of a business model and make sure that there is a common language that we use between our stakeholders, and it is so simple and easy to understand. It gives you a very clear perspective of an enterprise. It clearly tells you what kind of partnerships exist, or what kind of activities are performing, what kind of resources do you have at place, what kind of value proposition are you delivering to your customer, what kind of customer relationship do you have, what are the channels that you're following for you to execute your business model, what kind of customer segments you're following, what is your cost structure and revenue stream. Now, guess what? If you look at this, and I'm sure if some of you have already applied it, or maybe if you surf it even on net, there are a number of simple questions that you can ask in each of these quadrants and get a much clearer understanding of client's business model. And believe me, once you have that, it's easier said than done. It's so easy to look at this one slide and say, oh wow, this is great, I can just apply it on a day-to-day basis. Believe me, it's not easy. It's very comprehensive, but at the same time you need to have a very meticulous knowledge of how to apply this. And when you ask the answers to each of these questions that are listed in each of these categories, you need to have a very clear understanding and interpretation of those answers. And once you have that, I'm sure you can get much more comprehensive understanding of your client's business space. So, this is one of my favorite. I just wanted to call it out here in our webinar today. So, just to give a quick wrap up, these are the 6 takeaways I just want you to, you remember. There are perspectives that we've added. That's the way of applying BABOK in specific situations. There are 5 of them that have already been covered, called Agile, Business Intelligence, Information Technology, Business Process Management, and what more? I'm sorry. What was that? Sometimes I also forget, right? Yeah. And business architecture. I'm sorry for that. Right, so there are 5 perspectives, but that's not a complete list. There are more coming as we speak. There are more under the consideration with IIBA core team. We are looking at that. Requirements definition got simplified. We all looked at that. It's more around the need, the context, the stakeholders, the value, the change, and things like that. Core concept model, the underlying foundation of 6 key terms that has simplified our understanding about business analysis and our understanding of application of business analysis in various fields. Strategy analysis, again, a very comprehensive knowledge area that have evolved, and it is giving us a much comprehensive um, uh, knowledge of how we can approach a strategic engagement. uh, Design as a part of the solution design that we are talking, that we do on a day-to-day basis. So really separating it out from the technology or technical design, and talking about more requirements design elements that are necessary for us to develop the right solution. So we cover design, and then last but not the least, the techniques that have been that we've got now, the more comprehensive and more widely spread and widely used list of techniques that have been included in version 3. So with this, just one more last point. I'm sure there'll be some common questions. One of the question could be, where can I get the copy of a version 3.0? So for members, it's a free electronic download. You could just log in to the IIBA portal if you're a IIBA member, and download your free copy of version 3, a PDF copy. But for non-members, you can purchase the electronic copy online, and you could become member, and then you can you can download the copy again in PDF, EPUB, and Kindle format. There are 3 different formats that BABOK version 3 is available. One of the other common question that we get is, what should I be studying for my CBAB and CCBA exam? And for that, at least till the end of this year, we are still focused on version 2. So we've not migrated from version 2 to version 3 as far as these exams are concerned. But you'll soon see the migration happening by the end of this year. So you still have a few more months that these exams are based on version 2. And as soon as we hit this year end, hopefully we'll be migrating that to version 3 of the body of knowledge. So with that, I come to the end of this webinar. We still have some 15, 20 minutes and I'd like to open up this forum for questions. What you can do is there is a question window in your pane. You can write down your questions, and we'll take up these questions one by one. So the first question that we have received is, please define practitioners. When I say practitioners here, we're talking about people who are applying business analysis principles or this business analysis body of knowledge on a day-to-day basis. It could be IT business analyst, it could be business architects, it could be information architects, it could be so many roles in IT or non-IT space who are in the space of solving business problems on a day-to-day basis and then applying or defining a solution to those business problems. So that's what I mean when I talk about practitioners. Um, So there's another question which says which version should be referred in order to in order to one second. Let me just see if I can drag this window. Okay, I can get it now. Wow. So I hope you're able to see some of these questions as well. So there's a question on which version to use for CWAP CCBA, and I think I answered that question. Is there a change addition in the concepts in the change from uh, enterprise analysis to strategy analysis? So Manoj has asked that question. There is, I would say, it's more of an enhancement. It's not just the change, because if you look at the enterprise analysis chapter, it was more centered around just defining the business case, and it left it there. There was very little mention of risk. There was very little mention of the change strategy. So if you're talking about a business case, I'm sure business is going to go through some change. So it didn't cover change strategy. It didn't cover a lot of those elements that are necessary for the strategy execution. And I think if you look at strategy analysis now, that's what it refers to. So that's why I think it's a key change. I would think, if I need to mention one knowledge area that has gone through a massive change among the 6 knowledge area, then it is the strategy analysis. I would recommend everybody to read it. What are the PDU requirements for CBAP when taking the exam on version 2? Irrespective of which version you're going to use, there are 21 PDUs or CDUs for that matter that you need, um, and there are a number of ways in which you can accumulate those PDUs. Next question is about by Chaitanya. It says, in the non-IT world, how much percentage do you see are really applying business analysis in a professional way? Absolutely fantastic question. I think if you look at last 10 years, the, the appreciation of business analysis as a profession is changing. It is mind-boggling to see the transformation. And let me give you an analogy here. When we in late 80s, when we were talking about database administrators, most of the DBAs were just projected as people who would manage large data lakes and so on and so forth. There was no science behind it. Same is the case with project management, for that matter. People who knew business inside out. They were asked to manage projects. But guess what? With the invent of PMP, with the invent of PMBOK, a lot of maturity around the profession, the appreciation about the profession changed, and a lot of people started applying project management in a number of disciplines, a number of industries for that matter. So today, if you notice, whether it is construction or astronomy or talk about any domain for that matter, you see project management being applied, and it's the same thing that business analysis is going through. There are a number of spaces. In fact, I was just talking to, I just went through a very personal incident. My father was hospitalized. He was in a very bad state, and I was observing the doctor who was trying to discover what the real problem was, and my father's pancreas had failed. Believe me, the kind of questioning this guy did, he applied all his business analysis skills to come up with the right approach to solving my father's health problem. Then he conducted few tests, which means he applied some of the techniques which will validate the situation my father was in. And then he went through the complete diagnosis and applied his ton of experience and knowledge that he had gained through his masters and doctor education that he had gone through to really, come up with the right treatment. And when my father got treated, I told this guy, we were just chatting, and I thanked him because he almost brought my father out of a death knell. And I said, you know what? Your and my job is very simpler, but the fact that you're handling a much complex system than I am. And I do handle business, and if businesses fail, it's about money going the drain. But if human life fails, there is no looking back. Right? It's just that you're just done. So a lot of these non-IT professions have started appreciating the scope of business analysis, and that's the beauty of BABOK 3. If you look at the business analysis core concept model and 6 terms that we discussed, it's a tremendous simplification of business analysis as a profession. I would request you go back, when you go back home, think about a business problem or think about your own personal problem that you're trying to handle, and try to apply these 6 principles on those situations. I'm pretty sure you're going to get some answer to your problem space that you are in. So clearly there is an appreciation, there's a lot of science that is emerging now around business analysis space, more than it was in our previous life. I think it was more considered like an art. We were just branded as BAs without any kind of training, any kind of knowledge, any kind of exposure, and we were expected to deliver business outcomes, and that's not the case today. So long answer, but there is a lot of appreciation about business analysis in the non-IT space that has started to take place. I've seen a lot of the construction firms, a lot of the infrastructure development firms, a lot of digital adoption that's taking place. Number of new domains that have started emerging and started applying BABOK or the principles of business analysis. Let's look at the next question. In BABOK 2, we have knowledge areas, domains. Is anything added new? There is no new knowledge area that has been added. As we discussed, it's an enhancement of knowledge areas that have taken place. So the number of knowledge areas still remain 6. Ambrish has asked a question, if I can elaborate more on business canvas model. I think we did that. I would urge you to search on this technique. It's fairly simple to interpret. Of course, you need to practice it to apply it. Um, what I recommend is just take a printout of the canvas. It's a single page, and what are the questions that were listed on the slide? A lot of these are available on net. It's a free information. Just take that up and start answering those questions on the engagement for the engagement you are on, and you'd automatically see the benefit of business canvas model. That's one, and also it will help you get answers to number of questions that you didn't have, that you didn't know earlier. So I think it will be very helpful. Start applying it, and I'm sure you would see the difference. Let's take the next question. It says, from examination point of view, will the pattern format be changing, or would it remain the same? I think more or less it will remain the same. So if you remember, CVAP, CCB exams, these are more multiple choice questions. We're trying to simplify it from the examination point of view, but the format will more or less remain the same. How BA aligns or coexists with enterprise architecture framework like TOGAF and ZACMAN? Absolutely fantastic question. I think there's a lot of relevance between the two worlds. The way I look at it, and a lot of the people, in fact, I got an opportunity to interact with ZACMAN personally. I visit, I'm part of a BBC conference every year either I present or attend, and Mr. Zachman is a regular visitor there, and we spend hours together. I think the beauty of Zachman framework is its comprehensiveness that you can leverage to represent a particular enterprise. And if you relate this with strategy analysis is going to be more around a specific objective. So while TOGAF and Zachman frameworks give you much more comprehensive perspective of an enterprise, strategy analysis is more towards um, application of what you're trying to achieve as a business objective. So to me, both these things will coexist because they are complementing to each other. They are not competing with each other, and that's my view on any of the enterprise architecture frameworks that exist in the world. I haven't read BABOK 2, but now I am thinking to start studying CCB exam. There are two questions. Well, I couldn't read the two questions. I cannot. I'm sorry. I cannot read the text anymore. Let me jump to the next question. There are a number of them, and we just have 7 more minutes. The next question is by Arun. With the invent of new implementation models, um, where we see a consideration of roles that one resource play, what do you think is the direction for our business analysts? Example, in ideal agile methodology, a single resource needs to play multiple roles. Oh, absolutely fantastic. I think once you read agile perspective, you'll get much better clarity on it. But my take is like this. There are a number of roles that exist, but the principles of business analysis don't change. It's the situation that changes for us, and hence the application of the knowledge areas, application of BABOK changes, and hence the event of perspectives in BABOK. So it's not about role that's going to change. It's about the situations that are changing, and hence we need to be competent enough to know how to apply BABOK in those changing situations. And that's my take on the role of business analyst. So that's one. The other aspect that I keep talking is that world around us is changing so fast that we need to be able to adapt to those changes much faster than others. And the example I quote here is all the digital interventions that are taking place. Digital world. We talk about mobile everywhere. There are business companies who are just talking about mobile apps only business model and so on and so forth. So we need to know how to adapt to those fast transformations that are taking place. Digital, cloud, social, automation. These are some of the very clear examples that would impact our day-to-day work and day-to-day life. And I would urge you to be forward-looking into these areas. Make sure you're able to, you're able to prep yourself well, and start looking at how you're going to apply BABOK in those spaces. And I'm, even IIB for that matter is cognizant of these changes that are taking place, and we're looking at what new perspectives can we add going forward. So that's how I see, the roles for business analyst enhancing. I won't say changing; it's enhancing in a days to come. Let me go to the next question. It is advisable for someone who would like to prepare for CBAP now. Will it be possible to plan for exam before this year? Is it advisable for someone who would like to prepare for CBAP now? Will it be possible to plan for exams before this year? Why not? I think it is, of course, it's very individual specific question. If you think you can apply for your application, you meet all the criteria, you can apply and you can appear before the end of the year. I don't think anybody stops you for that. Timsy, next question. In such scenarios, which with which version should I start? As I don't think I would be able to give exam this year. Okay, fantastic question. You could, to me, you could start either of these versions, okay? But if you're in the IT space, I would recommend you start with BABOK 2, because that'll be more, more oriented towards IT scenarios. So you can simply adopt it and also relate it to your knowledge areas. And once you have done that, read BABOK 3 as well, and clearly you'll be able to clearly understand the differences that BABOK 3 has gone through, and you will also be able to appreciate the reasons why that difference existed in BABOK 3 versus BABOK 2. So I think that comprehensive knowledge to me would be much more valuable. But if you want to start with BABOK 3 and just start with that, I don't think that's a bad strategy either. So you can start in either of the versions. Um, the next question is by Laksh. Um, so he says, I've got a new opportunity to perform on VA role and I'm currently working as a PM in the existing organization. What is the distinct difference between PM and VA? Oh, I think there's a huge difference in my views, and that's my personal opinion. I'm sure you're going to get 10 different answers if you're going to talk to 10 people. The way I look at it is um, project management versus business analysis. They are two different mindsets. Project management is more about controlling cost, controlling schedule, and the three key KPIs of project management that PMBOK refers to, right? Cost, schedule, and resources. So you just focused on that. You're managing people. You're looking at day-to-day risks. You're making sure that the engagement is on track. However, business analysis is about identifying the real business problem and then defining what solution do we need to put in place to solve that problem. So they are two different minds. They are completely different, two different personalities in my views. Forget just the knowledge areas alone. I mean, PMBOK versus BABOK, there's no comparison because they address two different professions. So if I were to answer this question, if you're shuffling between PM and VA role, I think you need to be very clear on where you are headed and where your strengths lie. If your interest and strengths lie in project management space, I think that's what you should follow. But if you think your capabilities, your strengths, and your interest also lies in the BA space, then I think BABOK is the right model. How beneficial these exams are? Oh, absolutely beneficial. Okay, and I was telling it to one of the guys who visited today to my office. I appeared in exam in 2011, and it was not by choice; it was by chance, and that was because I was part of the IIB's Leadership Council even then, and I was hosting. I was hosting IIB's booth at BBC conference in Florida, and there were a lot of senior top BAs who were visiting the booth, and they will shake hand with me and say, "Oh, are you a CBAP?" And I would say, "No, no, no, I am not a CBAP." My thinking process was, I don't need one, right? I'm already part of the strategy council of IIBA. I've already built practices in a large scale, and I'm already done. But that's one question. 20 people visited that booth, and they asked me the question, "Are you a CBAP?" And my answer was no. I thought that's not good. I need to apply for it just for the sake of that title. And I came back the next day. I applied my application. I got approved, and within a month, I scheduled my exam, logged my room, and went through that learning curve. For that 1 month, I read BABOK, started relating to the jobs that I had handled, the project that I had delivered, and it became so relevant. And during that journey, and after I appeared the exam, and of course I qualified, I looked back and said, what kind of mistake was I committing? I was probably living in a cozy, comfortable world that I didn't need this knowledge. And believe me, it just changed the way I apply business analysis today, even after having 20 years of experience, right? So absolutely, this is no brainer to me. It will definitely benefit. It will definitely, even if you fail, it will help you become better business analyst and take it and that as a very key advantage. And I'm sure if you put in right effort, you're going to succeed. Next question: um, if I already have BABOK 2 CDUs, would I have to acquire BABOK 3 CDUs? No. The CDUs are CDUs and they'll be applicable. Where can I get a dump or model exam for CBAP? Do a Google stuff. You're going to get few of them fairly easily. I don't think you should be asking that question if you're a BA. These are simple things. They are simple information, and Google is the best channel today. Elicitation includes communication between BABOK and stakeholders. BABOK 3 highlighted collaboration as important role. So how it has been involved in the new version as compared to BABOK 2. I think you yourself said it, right? It's the collaboration. It was not just, so if you look at BABOK 2 elicitation, there were only 4 tasks: prepare for elicitation, conduct elicitation, make sure that you communicate the, document the elicitation results, and communicate the elicitation results to stakeholders. So if you look back and say, on your day-to-day job, is that what you do? No, I think we do that, but we also make sure that whatever we have elicited, we talk to all the stakeholders and make sure that everybody is in sync with what we're talking. So that collaboration, connect, making sure stakeholders are talking among themselves to make sure that they're on the same page is extremely critical, and that's why this chapter went through a comprehensive change and included collaboration in that. Next question, how much value CCBA adds to our profile, as I have never seen any job with CCBA CBAP certification mandatory. From a knowledge point of view, I think I've already answered that question. Even if you fail, I guarantee that you'll become a better business analyst. That's one. There are a number of companies who have started preferring CBAPs and CCBAs. That this world is changing. Globally, there are contracts that are being drafted by all our customers where people say, how many CBAPs, CCBAs do you have in the company? So there is a focused effort that corporates are spending in creating CBAP, CCBA capability within the company. So no questions. I think you'll see the benefit in time to come. Next question, I'm a PMP certified PM and want to grab CBAP soon. So it would be helpful to know the difference. I think I did talk about difference, but believe me, PMP and CBAP is a killer combination. If you have both, especially for large programs, which require a lot of the strategy thinking, which requires you to have understanding of the larger problem space and also manage that program, this is a very, very helpful combination. And there's a huge demand about PMBA combined capabilities, and if you have PMP and CBAP both, it will help you tremendously. Next question, you're right, recently an article is published in Chennai Times newspaper where BA has used documentation analysis technique in Tamil film. Yeah, I do remember, and I've seen that article too. Exactly, this is how you apply business analysis. That's the beauty of all these techniques and knowledge areas, right? You don't have to go through from knowledge area 1 step 1 to knowledge area 6 step n, right? You can pick and choose the situation you are in, look at that knowledge area, look at that task, look at the techniques, and just apply that. And this is a great example. With the invent of new implementation models where we see a consolidation of roles that one resource plays, what do you think is the direction of our business analyst? Example, in the ideal state, I think we did discuss this point. Oh, what happened? I think I've lost the track. 1 second. Let me come back to the questions we were at. Are there any steps that we can take to extend business analysis as a practice into many other areas other than IT, where we can make their lives better, both commercially as well as otherwise? Oh, absolutely. I think we've discussed a number of examples. I spoke about one of my personal life examples that I went through. So no questions here. We can definitely do that. It's a matter of thinking about those use cases or the applications of BABOK and business analysis principles in those areas. Appreciate if you can share a copy of this PPT. This is a voice recorded webinar. It will be available to you on your on the chapter YouTube channel. You can refer it whenever you need it, so you'll have it. Thank you very much, Ashish. I've been a BA for the last 8 years in banking technology and last 1 year in operations world in India. I've seen BAs being pigeonholed and viewed as resources to get job done, and I completely agree to that. The principles we discussed are brilliant, but honestly, I don't see higher management being proactive in providing the leeway to experiment around. Is this my experience, or these are odds that practices? Absolutely. So Debashish, you're bang on. I think it is because of the lack of appreciation of business analysis as a profession, and that is going through the change. So what I would recommend is that if you and your organization is again pigeonholed, you just said that, why don't you orient them on IIBA, orient them on the profession of business analysis, orient them on the body of knowledge and how that can be applied. So take that as a challenge, and I would request that to everybody on this call. Take that as a challenge, and talk to your stakeholders. If you need help, bring them to me, bring them, I'll be, or to Kannan for that matter, all the chapter presidents. We can have calls with them and explain them what's the value of IIBA for their world. And I'm sure that'll help you tremendously in solving your day-to-day problem. Next question, when we can find need of certified BAs in job posts? I mean, I don't know whether I understand this question well, but if you look at IIB's job channel on iib.org or any of these job portals, you can, and even LinkedIn for that matter, you'll see a lot of the jobs that mandates certified BAs. So then this is changing. Next question, how does the version affect the exam? Does the clearing score vary? So I think it's not about the parameters of qualifying and failing the exam. It's more about relevance of the questions that you would go through. So when it comes to BABOK version 3, you will see some of the questions that will change, and of course some of the new additions and changes that have happened in BABOK 3. You will hear you will see some of the application questions and theory questions around that too. So keep your fingers crossed. Next question, can we say that a BA and a consultant are one and the same? That is, their roles are same? Absolutely. You know what? I think one of the biggest challenge we all as business analysts, we have lived in this world. Somebody says I'm a principal consultant, somebody says I'm a strategy consultant, somebody says I'm a management consultant, somebody says I'm a consultant, somebody says I'm an information architect, somebody says I'm a product owner, somebody says I'm a business analyst, and so on and so forth. There are so many plethora of titles that exist in the industry who, if you look back and step back, you will see that a lot of these BABOK principles and BABOK as a whole is completely applicable. So, clearly to me, don't live in the title world as a BA title or a consultant title. Look at the profession, look at the role, and that will give you much better clarity on all the role definitions that you see across the world. And that's the reason you will, we are seeing tremendous adoption of IIBA, as a gold standard in the space of business analysis, being applied in multiple IT and non-IT industries in multiple roles. And you would see a lot of these. If you search on it, on just this aspect, you will see a lot of this information available publicly now. Next question, it is true to say that version 3 is more towards developing the BA in consulting sphere more than just a requirement analyst and solutionist, as well as define BA as a domain in itself, a horizontal than vertical, and therefore change the BA to a domain based. I think, what I look at it is, I think somehow I don't agree to this. Are we, even before BABOK 3 came in being, to me, all the BAs were really the consultants. So it's no, again, I think what happens is we confuse ourselves in the title, and just because of these terminologies, it becomes extremely confusing. If you look at consulting world and business analysis world, believe me, all of these are problem solving space. There are problems that we all get into, and there are solutions that we come up with. Look at this in the context of business analysis core concept model that we just discussed. And if you compare them, clearly there is so much simplicity that you'll discover in all these roles that we're talking. So it's not about horizontal and vertical. To me, they are all the way same. It's just that you're operating in a different problem space. That is it. Are there any documented use cases for digital age for business analysts that are available? There are no use cases available, but again, of course, this is a new space that's appearing. Everybody, every corporate, every large business house is looking at digital as the new way forward. There are a lot of companies that have emerged who are just talking about mobile-only platform, and they're not even talking about a large web-based or a brick and mortar model for that matter. So you can imagine the importance of digital. I'm sure all of us have had rides in Ubers and Olas of the world, and now we started shopping on Grofers and Pepperfry and so on and so forth. What are these? I think if you look at them, they brought in various business domains and technology together, and hence I think those are great use cases of how the technologies are being used to come up with a newer and newer business use case. And if you look at the underlying principles and the underlying mindset of the individuals who have come up with these newer business models, just imagine all they did was applying the simplified form of business analysis core concept model. They just understood the need very clearly. They just understood who the stakeholders are going to be. They just understood the change that they have to brought in, and so on and so forth. So it becomes so simpler when you start looking at the digital age, right? From a business analysis or a BABOK 3 point of view. So that's my answer to this question. Any example for collaborative games and how it is conducted and all are who or all can participate in organization? Well, I'm not sure when you say collaborative games, what do you mean by this? I will have to pass on this question. I don't think I understand this question well. And I think with this, I come to the end of all the questions that were listed down. Thank you very much. It was pleasure. I know we've gone beyond an hour. We just over by 15 minutes. It has been fantastic to talk to you. This is a recorded session. You will be able to view the recording on IIBA's the chapter YouTube channel. With that, you've got my contact details on the website on your screen. Um, if you have any questions, please mail it to me. That's much better than calling me because at times I get so many calls that I'm not able to answer back. And if there is a unknown number, more than likely, with the number of uh, investment calls and banking calls and credit card calls that all of us get, will end up ignoring. So maybe if there is any question, do write to me on the IIBA or NTT Data ID, and I'll be more than happy to answer that. So with this, we come to the end of our session. Thank you very much, and have a good day. Have a good evening. Thanks.